Okay, I want to call the Tennessee Board of Funeral Directors and Embalmers meeting to order. It's Tuesday, December the 8th, 2020, and this is another meeting via WebEx. First item is our roll.
McKinney. Mr. McKinney, I apologize. If everyone will please mute, if you're not the speaker, then we can cut down on all that noise and static. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bohannon. You call our roll.
Fred Berry.
Here.
Anthony Harris.
Here.
Tanya Skellhane.
Here.
Clark McKinney.
Here.
Charles Ron.
Here.
Robert Shackelford.
Here.
Mr. President, all board members are here and accounted for.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have a statement of necessity. Miss Elizabeth Bendell, our Associate General Counsel.
Morning, everyone. We made it to December finally. This was a telephonic scheduled meeting of the Board of Funeral Directors and Embalmers. Notice of this December 8th, 2020 meeting, including the date and time, was posted to the board's website on November 12th, 2019. Additionally, this month's agenda was posted to the website on December 3rd, 2020. As there is not a physical quorum present, a statement of necessity will be read into the record and filed with the Tennessee Secretary of State. Pursuant to TCA 8-44108B2, which states if a physical quorum is not present at the location of a meeting of a governing body, then in order for a quorum of members to participate by electronic or other means of communication, the governing body must make a determination that a necessity exists. Furthermore, TCA 8-44108A3 defines necessity as a matter to be considered by the governing body at that meeting requiring timely action by the body. That physical presence by a quorum of the members is not practical within the period of time requiring action, and that participation by a quorum of the members by electronic or other means of communication is necessary. As stated, this was a previously scheduled meeting of the Board of Funeral Directors and Embalmers that is now being held telephonically, and the purpose of this meeting with members attending by teleconference is to conduct regular business by the board, and voting will be conducted by roll call.
Thank you, Ms. Bendell. Next item on the agenda is to adopt our agenda as printed today. Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Rom.
I'll second.
And a second by, who was that?
Go with Fred, it's fine.
Okay, by Mr. Berry to adopt the agenda as it is printed. Ms. Bohannon, you call our roll.
Fred Berry.
Yes.
Anthony Harris.
Yes.
Tanya Haynes.
Yes.
Clark McKinney.
Yes.
Charles Ron.
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
Okay. The motion carries. Next item is review and approve the board meeting minutes for August the 11th, September the 8th, and October the 13th. I think everybody has had those and maybe had time to read those already. Do we need three separate motions, or can we do them all in one? Mr. Gribble.
You can.
Or Ms. Mendel.
Hi, it's Liz. You can do them all in one. I would like to note on the October minutes, there is a correction from the legal report. Item number 15 was presented against an establishment. There was just an error in the complaint number, and the actual complaint number was complaint 2020-062681. The respondent, disciplinary history, and facts all remain the same. So I just wanted to correct that on the record before you guys approve those minutes.
Okay, thank you.
This is Robert. I make a motion to approve the sets of minutes as amended.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Shackelford to approve the minutes of August, September, and October with the corrections.
This is Charles, I'll second.
And a second by Mr. Rom. Any further comments? Okay, Ms. Bohanna?
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Tanya Haynes,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Ron,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries. Next item is our legal report. Ms. Elizabeth Bendale, Associate General Counsel, and let the record reflect that Mr. Shackelford is recused from our legal report today. Ms. Bendale?
Item number 1 and number 2 go together. They're complaint 2020-05-2161 against a funeral director and complaint 2020-05-2181 against an embalmer, both which have no disciplinary history. This was an anonymous complaint that was submitted against the respondent, alleging that the respondent is acting in the capacity of a funeral director and embalmer, despite the respondent surrendering both of their license. The respondent did not respond to the complaint. There were 2 funeral homes associated with the respondent, and they did respond to the complaint and indicated that they were not working with the respondent or that the respondent was not acting in the capacity of a funeral director and embalmer. These complaints were sent for investigation based on the allegations. In October and November 2020, a board field investigator interviewed and obtained documents from various parties involved. The investigator obtained affidavits from 5 licensed funeral directors that were connected to the respondent, as well as the respondent themselves. There were no violations found. It's legal's recommendation to close this complaint at this time.
Motion to accept recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Rom to accept council's recommendation.
This is Anthony. I'll second.
Second by Mr. Harris. Any questions, comments? Okay, Ms. Hannah?
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Tanya Haynes,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Ron.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries. Next item.
Items number 3 and 4 go together. They're complaint 2020-06-5441 against an establishment and complaint 2020-06-5451 against the funeral director. This was based on a inspection report performed at the respondent establishment in August 2020. During the inspection, the representative discovered that the funeral director's license for the respondent funeral director had expired on May 31st, 2020, and was not reinstated until June 26, 2020, during which time the respondent funeral director conducted services for 8 deceased persons. The respondent did respond to the complaint and apologized for the oversight. Additionally, the respondent stated that during this time of the license expiration, the respondent funeral director was dealing with their father's illness and ultimate passing, but that as soon as they found out about the license expiration, they rectified the situation. Based on the disciplinary history, it's legal's recommendation to do a letter of warning for both the establishment and the funeral director.
This is Fred. I'll move that we accept the recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Berry to accept council's recommendation.
This is Anthony. I'll second.
And a second by Mr. Harris. Any questions? All right, Ms. Bohanna?
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Haynes,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Ron.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The motion carries. Next item.
Item number 5 is complaint 2020-06-5511 against an establishment with some disciplinary history. This was also based on an inspection conducted in August 2020 of the respondent establishment, during which time the representative discovered that the respondent's establishment license had expired on July 1st, 2020, and was not renewed until July 13th. The respondent did not respond to the complaint. It's legal's recommendation to authorize for formal hearing and authorize a civil penalty of $250 via consent order.
Okay.
This is Anthony. Do we know when the complaint was sent? And you're saying still to date we have no response, correct?
That is correct. It was sent, the notice of violation is usually sent right after the inspection is conducted. So that would be in August 2020.
I'll make a motion, we accept legal's recommendation for the formal hearing and civil penalty of $250.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Harris to accept council's recommendation.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Berry. Any discussion? All right, Ms. Bohannon.
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Tanya Haynes,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Ron,
Yes.
All right, the motion carries. Next.
Item number 6 and number 7 go together. That's complaint 2020-06-5691 against an establishment, and complaint 2020-06-5711 against the funeral director. The establishment has some disciplinary history. The funeral director has none. This was based on an August 2020 inspection as well. During the inspection, the representative discovered that the funeral director's license for the respondent funeral director had expired on June 30th, 2020, and was not reinstated until August 4th, 2020. The respondent funeral director did not appear to conduct any services during this time. The respondent did respond to the complaint and indicated that they attempted to renew their license but had technical issues, and they indicated that during that period they did not conduct any services. It's legal's recommendation to do a letter of warning for both the establishment and the funeral director.
Okay.
This is Fred. I move to accept the recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Berry to accept council's recommendation.
Charles.
Tanya Haynes, second.
I have a second by Ms. Haynes. Any discussion? Okay, Ms. Bohannon.
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Tanya Haynes,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Ron,
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Ms. Bendale.
Item number 8 is complaint 2020-06-5801 against an establishment with some disciplinary history. This is a consumer complaint alleging unprofessional conduct by the respondent. The consumer indicated that in August 2020, their sister had passed away in Kentucky and was transported to the respondent establishment. The consumer states that over a 3-week period, they contacted the respondent informing them that she was the next of kin and that her sister needed to be transported back to Kentucky. The consumer further stated that the respondent would not release her sister's remains without her paying them. The respondent did respond to the complaint and indicated the following: that the respondent was contacted by Bowling Green Medical Center, indicating that the family had requested their services, that the consumer then contacted the respondent, indicating that they did not have the money and they wanted their sister to be transported back to Kentucky, that the respondent disputes the claim that they informed the consumer that they threatened to hold the body until the consumer paid, and that the respondent transported the consumer's sister back to Kentucky free of charge. The consumer did provide a rebuttal disputing the respondent's claims. It's legal's recommendation to close this complaint based on the allegations.
Motion to approve recommendation.
A motion by Mr. Rahm to accept council's recommendation.
Anthony, I'll second.
Second by Mr. Harris. Any discussions, questions? Okay, Ms. Bohannon.
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Tanya Haynes,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Ron.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries. Next.
Item number 9 is complaint 2020-06-7331 against an expired apprentice funeral director registration with no disciplinary history. This is a consumer complaint alleging unprofessional conduct. The consumer stated that they had met with the respondent regarding the purchasing of a headstone for their nephew. The consumer states that they had paid the respondent in March 2020 with the remaining balance to be paid in May 2020. In April 2020, the consumer states that the headstone design was finalized and that the respondent was unresponsive to phone calls after this finalization. The consumer further indicated that the respondent had indicated that the marker would be placed in August, but as of the date of the complaint, the marker had not been placed. The respondent has not responded to the complaint. All correspondence with the respondent has been returned as undeliverable. Legal did reach out to the consumer to follow up, but was unsuccessful in doing so. It's legal's recommendation to do a letter of warning in this one because I believe there might be service issues if we were to take this forward to a formal hearing.
Mrs. Bendale, what was the reason for not going to a formal hearing?
This expired apprentice does not have any disciplinary history, so usually the first step would be a letter of warning. However, if we were to recommend a civil penalty, I think there'd be service issues. I don't think we'd be able to serve the respondent, as all of the correspondence we have sent them so far has been undeliverable. I've cross-checked the address we have on file with where the complaint was sent, and everything is coming back undeliverable at this time.
Okay.
So in other words, you can't find him or her, him or
That
her.
is correct. Yeah.
Okay. And evidently the consumer does not know where the individual is either, I guess.
The address listed on the complaint is the address we have on file. However, the mail is coming back into undeliverable.
Okay.
Motion to accept recommendation.
I have a motion by Mr. Rahm to accept council's recommendation.
This is Fred. I'll second.
Mr. Berry knew I was looking at him. Second by Mr. Berry. Any discussion? All right, Ms. Bohanna.
Fred Berry. Anthony Harris.
Yes.
Tanya Haynes.
Yes.
Clark McKinney.
Yes.
Charles Aram.
Yes.
Okay,
the motion carries. Next item.
Item number 10 is complaint 2020-069641 against an embalmer with no disciplinary history. This is a complaint submitted by a licensed funeral director alleging unprofessional conduct. Specifically, the complainant alleges that they took over a position from the respondent at a medical college and noticed that there were multiple unembalmed bodies left by the respondent, despite the respondent listing that the bodies had been embalmed on the death certificate. The complainant states that they alerted the Office of Vital Statistics and amended the death certificate. The respondent did respond to this complaint and indicated that they were informed that they were terminated from the medical college due to a reduction in staff. Because of the termination being effective immediately, the respondent indicated that they were unable to complete the embalming process, to which the college was alerted of such. The respondent states that the embalming of the cadavers for anatomical donation is unlike a regular embalming and requires more time than normal. Therefore, they were unable to complete the embalming prior to their departure. The respondent also states that they were not responsible for entering the death certificates. Lastly, the respondent indicated that college internally had investigated the concerns and no basis was found. The medical college did provide a letter indicating that they had internally investigated the matter and found that the respondent did nothing wrong. It's legal's recommendation to close this matter.
Okay.
This is Anthony. I'll make a motion. We accept legal's recommendation.
Okay. I have a motion by Mr. Harris to accept council's recommendation.
Charles, I'll second.
I have a second by Mr. Ron. Discussion. Okay, Ms. Bohanna.
Fred Berry.
Yes.
Anthony Harris.
Yes.
Tanya Haynes.
Yes.
Clark McKinney.
Yes.
Charles Aram.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries. Next item.
Item number 11 is complaint 2020-071041 against an establishment with some disciplinary history. This was a consumer complaint alleging unprofessional conduct. Specifically, the consumer indicated that in or around late July, early August, the respondent establishment removed the consumer's father's body from the hospital after the consumer had requested an autopsy. Additionally, the consumer states that the respondent refused to give them the death certificate despite the consumer being next of kin. The respondent did provide a response to the complaint and indicated the following: that on July 31st, 2020, the respondent had received a phone call from the deceased fiance regarding the passing of the deceased. On that day, the hospital reached out to the respondent regarding the removal of the deceased, and an appointment was made for the removal to occur on August 3rd. The respondent states that the consumer never expressed wanting an autopsy to the respondent, and the respondent denies the allegation that the consumer was refused a death certificate. The respondent says that they informed the consumer that they would order a death certificate, but they have not heard from the consumer since. It's legal's recommendation to close this complaint.
Okay.
Anthony, I'll make a motion. We accept recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Harris to accept council's recommendation.
So moved.
And a second by Mr. Rom. Any discussion? Okay, Ms. Bohanna.
Fred Berry,
Yeah.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Tanya Haynes,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rom.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries. Next item. Let's see, you're on mute. There you go.
Item number 12 and number 13 go together, so I'd like to read them together, even though
Okay.
item number 13 is a represent. Item number 12 is complaint 2020-092901 against an embalmer. And item number 13 is a represent, and it's complaint 2018-049971. And this was placed into litigation monitoring status in November of 2018. This complaint was opened and presented at the November 13th, 2008 meeting as follows: that the complainant alleged that the respondent had embezzled money from a funeral establishment and obtained several credit cards in the funeral home's name and used them for personal purchases. A final judgment was entered in this case, and the respondent was found guilty of a Class E felony charge of theft greater than $1,000 but less than $2,500. And the respondent received a 1-year sentence that was suspended to a 1-year probation supervised by community corrections. Based on this final judgment, it's legal's recommendation to authorize for formal hearing and authorize for suspension of the funeral director and embalmer's license for a period of 6 calendar months, beginning on the first day of the month following execution of the order, a civil penalty of $1,000, 10 hours of continuing education courses approved by the board, and successfully passed the Tennessee laws, rules, and regulations exam, all done via consent order. Additionally, the consent order shall include that the respondent cannot perform services, work, or be associated in any manner with a funeral establishment during the suspension period. And that's the recommendation for item number 12 and item number 13.
Okay, thank you.
Bendale, this is on the 6 months. How did you all come up with 6 months as far as the suspension?
Originally, based on the judgment, I was considering a year. However, I think the factor of not being able to be connected in any way to a funeral establishment, a shorter 6-month period seemed appropriate based on this outcome. It's a Class C felony. It's pretty serious matter, but I'm willing to take suggestions from the board if they would like to reconsider something else.
Well, 12 months is really what kind of came to my mind, and that's the reason I was wondering how your office came up with the 6 months. I agree. It's a very serious situation, and I think we need to pass along the seriousness of that and increase that to a 12-month suspension.
Okay, and that would be 12 months with no association with a funeral establishment. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Rom, is that in the form of motion?
Yes, it is.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Rom to increase the suspension period to 1 year from the 6 calendar months. And then following the rest of council's recommendation. Is there a second?
This is Anthony. I'll second.
Okay, and a second by Mr. Harris. Any discussion? All right, Ms. Bohannon.
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Anya Haynes,
Yes.
Charles Brown,
Yes.
Mark McKinney.
Yes. Okay, the motion carries. And does that conclude your report, Ms. Bendale?
That does. That concludes December's report.
Okay, thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is the Executive Director's Report. Mr. Robert Gribble.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, board members and others on the call. First thing on my report is the legislative report. Our office has not received any notification from either the Tennessee State Funeral Director and Morticians Association or the Tennessee Funeral Directors Association, Funeral Directors Association, of new legislation that they intend to pursue during the upcoming legislative session. As always, we extend an open invitation to both associations and any other interested parties to meet with their staff and legal prior to introduction of legislation affecting the Board of Funeral Directors and Embalmers. So if someone would like to do that, if they'll get in touch with me, I'll be glad to schedule and arrange for the appropriate parties to be present. The licensee report is a report of licenses administratively approved by the Executive Director pursuant to Board authority for the period of October 10, 2020 through December 4, 2020. And you have a list of those establishments and those individuals that were issued license during that time or had to change their license, like a change of ownership or change of ownership in name. The closed establishment report, we have no establishments that have reported closing since the last board meeting. The disciplinary action report, this meeting is a report of consent orders that have been administratively accepted and approved by the Executive Director pursuant to board authority, and as reported on the September 2020 and October 2020 regulatory board's disciplinary action reports. And you have a list of those funeral establishments. In this case, they're all funeral establishments, no individual disciplinary action that I see. And those have been previously reported to the public on the September and October 2020 regulatory board report. The complaint report for this meeting, as of December 3, we had a total of 41 complaints open. 16 of those were against a funeral director, an embalmer, apprentice funeral director, apprentice embalmer, and 25 of those were against an establishment. I have just a few other just general housekeeping things I want to mention. You've been sent emails about these, but just to mention them for the public's benefit and to put them on the record. The Model Practice Act draft from the International Conference of Funeral Service Examining Boards. You've been sent that information. If you want to comment on it individually, you have until a week from yesterday to make those comments, and you have the contact information to do that. Or so anyone who is licensed has the opportunity to do that, not only the board members. Yesterday, I sent you, a few days ago, I sent you an email where we have a new commissioner at the department, and some of you who have been on the board from a while may remember him because at one time he was the assistant commissioner for regulatory boards. That's Carter Lawrence. And then yesterday, it was named that a deputy commissioner, Jennifer Peck, who used to be an executive director with in one of the regulatory boards. She was already the deputy commissioner, and she's been also named as the chief of staff and chief operating officer. And then Toby Compton, who has been serving as the assistant commissioner for regulatory boards, he's been promoted to deputy commissioner, and he'll be overseeing the division of regulatory boards, insurance, securities, and TennCare oversight. And then coming from the governor's office to the Department of Commerce and Insurance to be the assistant commissioner of regulatory boards is Alex Martin. So some changes internally for those things. And also, I am excited to report to you that we found out that we have a new consumer board member coming to join you, lady, Miss Haynes, and the gentleman on the board. And his name is Scotty Porch, Poarch, Scottie Porch. He's from Marshall County, and his appointment is effective January 1, 2021. It's a 4-year appointment and runs through December 31, 2024. He was appointed by the governor, and he'll be joining the board as the consumer board member for the January board meeting. Those are the things that I have in my report. I'll be glad to answer any questions that any board member or any other individual might have as far as that goes.
Okay. We certainly extend our congratulations to all of those folks, and especially we're glad to get a consumer member. We've been without one for some time, and especially want to congratulate Carter Lawrence and Toby Compton. We know both of them, and congratulations for their promotions. Chair will entertain a motion to accept the director's report.
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Rom,
Second.
and second by Mr. Berry. Ms. Bohannon.
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Maya Haynes,
Yes.
Clark McKinney, Charles Ron.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries. Approval of license applications. I don't think we have either of any individuals or establishments, do we, Mr. Gribble?
That's correct, Mr. President.
Okay, all right. And the next item is we need to elect the board officers for 2021, and the chair will entertain a motion or nominations for president next year.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a nomination, Mr. Robert Shackelford as president.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Anthony, I'll second that.
All right, a second by Mr. Harris. All those in favor of Shackelford moved up to president, Mr. Bohannon?
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Maya Haynes,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Ron,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Abstain.
Thank you.
He abstained out of humility. Congratulations, Mr. Shackelford. Next item is election for vice president next year.
Ms. Anthony, I'll nominate Charles Rom for that, please.
Okay, we have a motion for Charles Rom. Do we have a second?
Tanya, I'll second.
That motion.
Okay. Charles got a second by Ms. Haynes and Mr. Shackelford. Ms. Bohannon.
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Maya Haynes,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford,
Yes.
Charles Ron.
Abstain.
Thank you.
Another humble fellow there. Thank you all, and congratulations, Mr. Rom, for moving on up. The next item will be our continuing education liaison for 2021.
It is with great relief that I recommend Mr. Anthony Harris to that position.
Okay. Have a motion for Mr. Harris to be continuing education liaison for 2021. there a second?
This is Fred, I'll
Tanya,
second.
I'll second.
Okay, all right. Mr. Harris got 3 seconds. I believe Ms. Haynes pulled the trigger first. All right, Ms. Bohannon.
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
I will also abstain.
Tanya Haynes,
Yes.
Clark McKinney, Charles Rom,
Absolutely.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Harris. You will get tired of signing your name.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Do we have any new business? Before we adjourn, I want to say thank each of you for your work and your service this year. This has been a strange year in a lot of ways, and but we have pulled off all of our board meetings pretty successfully via WebEx without too much interruptions. And I think most interruptions was on my part, but with my internet falling out. But anyway, and depending on what happens, I may or may not be here the next meeting or so forth and so on. But it's been a privilege to be with each one of you, and wish you the best during the holidays, Christmas, New Year's. And is there any other comments before we adjourn?
Yes, Mr. President, I would like to commend you on the manner of which you have handled the board during these times, and you've acted very professionally, and I appreciate you personally, and sorry to see you go possibly immediately, but again, thank you for all your hard work, and we appreciate you.
Thank you.
Anthony, it's been a pleasure to work with you this year. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. We have a motion to adjourn.
Sir.
No move.
Second.
All right. We have a motion by Mr. Harris and a second by, I guess, Mr. Shackford. Ms. Bohannon, I guess you got to call the roll again.
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Tanya Haynes,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rom,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
Okay. The motion carries. Thank you all.
Just a reminder, y'all, for Miss Lisa, don't forget to do your per diem and send it in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.